There's a knock at the door. It's late. You're alone. And when you open it, two children are standing on your step, a boy and a girl. 10, maybe 12, calm, polite. They say they need to come inside, just to use the phone, just for a moment. They're cold, they're lost. They need to call their mother. Small, ordinary words, the kind you'd never think twice about, but your body has already gone cold before your mind understands why. Something older than thought has pulled tight in your chest, and the hair has lifted on your arms. And then you see it. Their eyes, there's no white, no color, no center, just black, full, flat, perfect black, corner to corner, lid to lid. And as you stand there, frozen, holding the door, every instinct you have left is screaming one single thing at you: do not let them in. This is the legend of the black-eyed children. And what makes it cruel is not any one story. It's that so many people, strangers scattered across the world who never met and never heard the tale, come back describing the very same encounter down to the smallest detail. It always begins with a knock, late, at a door, at a car window, at the door of a motel room at the edge of nowhere. Children who appear out of the dark in places children should not be. Empty roads with no houses for miles, parking lots with no parents in sight. They are always polite, unnervingly polite, and they always want the same thing. They want you to let them in. And this is the part that turns the cold in your stomach to ice. They can't seem to do it themselves. They can't cross your threshold. They can't open the car door. They need you to do it. They need you to invite them. They need to hear you say yes. The ones who've stood face to face with them and lived to tell it all describe the same wrongness. The way the children speak is just slightly off, too flat, too formal. The words assembled by something that has studied how people talk, but has never itself been one. And as you hesitate, the politeness begins to curdle into pressure. Let us in. We won't hurt you. We can't come in unless you say it's okay. Please, just say it's okay. And the fear keeps rising. And you keep looking at those eyes, that solid, lightless black. And people describe a dread so total, so animal, that more than one has said it was like standing at the door and finding death itself standing patiently on the step, waiting to be invited home. Almost every account ends the same way. They refused. They threw the door shut, or wrenched the car into gear, or simply backed away saying no, no, no. And in the half second it took to look again, the children were gone. Not running, not fleeing into the dark, just gone, as though the step had always been empty, as though no one had ever been standing there at all. No one can tell you what they are. Lost spirits, something older, wearing the shape of a child because it knows a child is the one thing you'll open your door for at night. A modern ghost story, born in the dark corners of the internet, that somehow keeps happening, again and again, to people who swear on everything they have that they never once heard it. But here is the thing I want you to carry with you as the room goes quiet and you start to drift. In every version of this story, the rule never changes. They cannot come in unless you let them. They need your permission. They need your word. So if you are ever home alone, late at night, and a knock comes at your door, and you open it to two calm, polite children who look up at you and ask, so very nicely, if they can please come inside, the only thing in this world keeping you safe is the word no. Sleep well, and whatever you do, don't open the door. The chair moved on its own, and the police officer watched it happen. She was standing in the doorway of a child's bedroom, a grown woman, trained, sober, a person who did not believe in ghosts, and a heavy chair slid across the floor in front of her. No one touched it. No one was near it. It traveled several feet across bare carpet and stopped. And she was so badly shaken that she did something a police officer almost never does for something like this. She wrote it down. She signed her name to a statement, swearing she had seen a piece of furniture move with nothing on this earth to move it. This was an ordinary house on an ordinary street in North London in 1977, and over the next 18 months, whatever was inside it would become the most documented haunting in human history. And no one, to this day, can tell you for certain what it was. It settled on a family of 4, a mother alone, raising her children in a small rented house, and it fixed itself, above all, on one of the daughters, a girl of 11. It started the way they always start, knocking from inside the walls in the dark. That same patient knock that runs like a thread through every one of these stories, as if something is standing just on the other side of the plaster, asking to be let through. Then the house began to move. Drawers shot open on their own and hung there. Toys lifted off the floor and flew hard into walls. Marbles and bricks launched across rooms with no hand to throw them. Investigators arrived expecting to catch a clever child in the act, and instead found themselves flinching, ducking, as objects tore through the air in front of their faces and cracked against the walls behind them. And then it found her voice. It came out of the little girl, but it was not the little girl. It was deep and cracked and old, the voice of a grown man grinding its way out of an 11-year-old's throat. And when they asked it who it was, it told them. It said it had died in that house. It said it had gone blind, and then it had died, sitting in a chair in the corner of that very room. It described its own death. It cursed at the men questioning it. It knew things it should not have known. She would speak in that voice for hours, far longer than a child could fake before the throat tore itself raw. Doctors examined her and said the sound was being produced in a way that should have damaged her vocal cords. It never did. There is a recording. It still exists. You can hear it if you want to. A child's body in a quiet bedroom and a dead man's voice climbing out of it in the dark. For decades, people have tried to take this story apart, and sometimes the girls were caught cheating, bending a spoon, hiding under blankets, playing it up for the cameras. Children do that, especially frightened children who have suddenly become the most watched thing in the country. The skeptics hold that up and say, there, a game, all of it. But then there are the things that don't come apart. A police officer's signed, sworn statement, objects flying in front of trained, doubtful investigators, a voice that should have shredded a child's throat and didn't, and a heavy piece of furniture, captured by a camera, caught fully in the air. A girl flung across her own bedroom by nothing at all, frozen forever in a photograph that you can still look at today. The family moved out, in the end, but the house is still there. People live in it now, and every so often, someone who knows the story walks down that street and stops and looks up at one particular bedroom window and wonders what it was that spoke through a little girl in the dark, and whether it ever really left, or whether it's simply waiting, patient as a knock on the wall, for someone new. The smell comes first, cat urine, and underneath it, jasmine, sweet and wrong, drifting through a house where there is no cat and no flowers. Then the light bulbs start to die, one after another, popping in their sockets in the dark. Then the shadows at the edges of the rooms begin to move when you're not looking straight at them. And then, every night, the same dream. An old woman's face, close to yours, watching you sleep, full of a hatred you have done nothing to earn. Almost everyone who has ever kept this thing in their home has described those exact things. The smell, the dying lights, the shadows, the old woman. They say something is sealed inside it, a clinging, restless spirit. They call it a dybbuk, and here is what should unsettle you most about this story. People know all of this, and they keep buying it anyway. It looks like nothing, a small wooden wine cabinet, old, the kind of thing you'd pass 100 times in a junk shop. The story, as it's been told and retold, begins with an old woman, a woman who had survived one of the darkest things a human being can survive, who kept this little cabinet beside her all her life. She told her family there was something inside it, something that must never be let out. The box, she said, was never, ever to be opened. When she died, against everything she had asked for, it was sold. The man who bought it restored old furniture for a living, and almost at once his world began to sour. Lights failed in his workshop. He came in one morning to find every bulb shattered across the floor and the air thick and choking with the smell of cats, though no animal had ever set foot inside. Unsettled, he decided to be rid of it the kindest way he could think of. He gave it to his elderly mother as a gift. The moment it was placed in her hands, witnesses say, she suffered a stroke. She lost her speech. And when, later, she struggled to communicate, she reached for letters, one painful symbol at a time, and spelled out 3 words: no, hate, gift. She had not wanted it. Something in it hated her, and she knew, somehow, that it had been no gift at all. After that, he could not get rid of it. Everyone he gave it to brought it back, pale and frightened, describing the same things: the smell, the shadows, the exhaustion that settled over the house like a wet blanket, and the dream, always the dream, always the old woman watching. So he did what frightened people do with a thing they can't understand. He sold it to a stranger and made it someone else's nightmare, and it moved on, from hand to hand, home to home. A student who kept it woke in the night to the sound of breathing beside his bed and the sight of a dark shape moving across the room toward him. Every owner wrote down the same symptoms, as if reading from a script none of them had ever seen. The smell, the dread, the sense of being watched by something that did not like them and wanted them gone. In the end, a man bought it on purpose, to study it, to understand it, and came to wish deeply that he never had. The jasmine followed him through his house and would not leave. His health turned, and night after night the old woman came for him in his sleep, until at last he did the only thing he had left. He had the box sealed, properly, with prayer, by people who deal with such things, and put as far from his life as he could manage. But that's the part that should sit with you tonight. It was never destroyed. It's still out there. It has been bought and sold and put on display and filmed, and people line up to stand near it, and people still pay to own it. Because under all the fear, there's a question none of us can quite put down. What if it's real? And what if the only reason it's quiet is that no one, since that old woman died, has been brave enough or foolish enough to open it again? Something had her by the hair. She felt it close around her scalp in the dark. Not a hand, not fingers, but a grip, cold and certain. And then her body was moving, dragged, across the floorboards of her own bedroom, heels scraping, nightgown bunching, while she screamed into a house full of people who came running with candles and found nothing, nothing holding her, nothing to pull against. Just a young girl being hauled across the room by the empty air, her hands clawing for something, anything to hold on to. This was a farm in Tennessee. The year was 1817, and what was in that house had only just begun. Listen, I want you to picture it the way they lived it, because that's the only way this story works on you, the way it worked on them. It begins quietly. It always does. John Bell, a farmer, a careful man, well respected, is walking the edge of his field as the light dies, and he sees an animal that shouldn't exist. The body of a dog, the head of something else. It watches him. He raises his gun, and between one breath and the next, it simply isn't there anymore. No sound, no movement in the grass. Gone. He tells himself it was the dusk playing tricks. He walks home. He says nothing. That night, the knocking starts. Soft. Knuckles on the outer wall of the house. The family lie still in their beds and listen to it, and then they realize it's moving, slowly, traveling along the outside of the house, wall to wall, corner to corner, circling them in the dark. And then, the way you somehow always know these things, they feel it cross the threshold. It is no longer outside, it is in the house with them. It learns them slowly, the way a cat learns a wounded bird. It pulls the blankets from the children where they sleep. It pinches, it bites, and in the morning there are marks on their skin, in perfect rows, like teeth. It strikes the youngest girl across the face hard enough that the crack of it echoes, and a red handprint blooms on her cheek while her parents are still fumbling for a light, and then, slowly, over weeks, it begins to speak. At first it's nothing, a hiss under the floor, wind where there is no wind. Then it's a whisper you can almost shape into words. And then, one night, it is a voice, clear, filling the room, heard by everyone at once, and it tells them, calmly, what it has come to do. It has come for John Bell, and it will not stop until he is in the ground. Now here is what turned a haunting into a legend that has lasted 200 years. The voice didn't just threaten, it talked. For hours, in the dark, to anyone who would sit and listen. It quoted scripture, word for word, without a single error. It recited 2 sermons given that morning in 2 different churches, miles apart, at the same hour. Every pause, every phrase, as if it had stood in both rooms at once. It told the family their own secrets. It told the neighbors theirs. People came from across the county to sit in that farmhouse and ask it questions, and it answered all of them, and it was never wrong. And the whole time, in the corner of every room, John Bell was dying. It came over him in pieces. His tongue would swell in his mouth until he couldn't swallow, couldn't eat, couldn't speak. His face would lock and twist. He would fall to the floor shaking, and from the dark corner the voice would laugh, not cruelly loud, worse, delighted, describing, in a pleasant tone, exactly how it intended to finish him and how long it would take. On a grey December morning, John Bell did not wake. By his bed, they found a small dark bottle no one in the family had ever seen. They didn't know what was in it, so they touched a single drop to the tongue of the farm cat, and the animal was dead before it hit the floor, and the voice rose up through the whole house, bright and triumphant, and told them it had poured that draught down John Bell's throat while he slept, and that he would never rise again. They buried him on a cold day, and as the family stood at the open grave, witnesses swore the voice came back one final time, singing, loud and merry and obscene, a drinking song ringing out across the headstones as they lowered him into the earth. Then it spoke to them gently, almost kindly, and said it was leaving now, but that it would return to their children's children in 100 years. That century passed. Some say nothing came. Others say the family simply learned never to speak of what did. The farm is gone now, swallowed back into the land. But there is a cave on that ground that still carries the name, and people who go down into it still come back up pale, saying they heard something moving behind them in the dark, keeping pace just out of the light.